It's Monday, November 13th, 2023. This is the Roqe Roundtable. Welcome to the Roqe Roundtable. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto. From Canada, Salam Dostan Aziz. Durud bar shama. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are in the world today. Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora and beyond. This is the Monday Roundtable, where we examine, discuss, debate issues and ideas of the week in the Iranian diaspora. In the studio, she's our regular Roqe Roundup specialist, not to be confused with the round table.
Yes.
And a producer for us here, smart Pegah Ganji. Hello, Pegah.
Hello.
Also in the studio, an Iranian-Canadian marketing strategist and designer, Resonant Raha Ru.
Hi.
The triple R.
That's me.
Hi, Raha.
Hello, Jian.
You know, there's, before we get to the roundtable items, and today we have the end of quote unquote Chaharshanbe Suri. We have the Ministry of Education in Iran gendering textbooks so that they should be putting out an edict or suggesting that they're going to make textbooks completely different for boys and girls. Something they've talked about before, but what a horrible direction that the country continues to go in. We've got Iranians in the diaspora in protester crossfire. We'll explain what that means, but it has to do with the issue of the war going on with Israel and Gaza and the Palestinians and Hamas and where Iranians fit in. And some interesting news today breaking from Manoto, the TV network, and we'll get to that, and the Manoto Memo that came out. But first, something I really didn't want to talk about.
You didn't want to talk about
I did not want to talk about this because although it is more, it's an issue that is, I would say, if not more important, certainly more devastating than most of the things on that.
Oh, I feel like we're gonna hear the bell.
Well, no, it's not. It's not about Arsenal.
Okay. See, there it is.
I worked in Arsenal. No, it's worse than that. It's ghormeh sabzi smell. I wanted to just give you an update.
Okay.
Do you know this story?
Yes.
You've heard
Yeah,
you listened to the show.
I was here.
Oh, you were here.
We were talking about
I thought it was on the
Last
Thursdays
week.
when
No.
Resonant Raha's not here.
No,
So-
she had the genius idea of having a car wash dedicated to.
That's right. Your
Yes.
suggestion was to sell my car.
Yes,
Yeah.
get rid of it.
But that's right. The car. You did have the genius. That was like at least a week ago, right?
Yeah.
So
It was.
a week has passed. No, you don't understand. I've cleaned the car. I've pretty much gone through the local hardware store, shelf of cleaning products.
aisle.
I have done whatever I could. There were some bags that were in the back seat of my car. I think I mentioned this.
Yeah.
And the ghormeh sabzi, when my mother's ghormeh sabzi, my wonderful mother, this is not a reflection on my mother. It's a reflection on my own malice at spilling the ghormeh sabzi.
You actually didn't listen to your mother.
That's
if
correct.
I recall the story correctly.
That is correct. The answer to all of my problems is listening. Not
course.
listening to my mother enough, my wonderful mother. So, but she did happen to give me some ghormeh sabzi with a faulty Tupperware container. And anyway, so it ends up spilling, and this is as everyone knows, a disaster
Right.
for Iranians, and not to mention the rest of the world. So there were some. I just want to explain the extent to which this ghormeh sabzi, this concoction that Iranians have developed, this terrorizing thing, how strong it is, because the ghormeh sabzi juice spilled. Not just all over the back of the car, but and by all over I mean just a little trickle, but that was enough to do the damage. It's like bleach; a little bit gets on, and
that's it.
So, but it spilled on these bags. Now, what were the bags? Here in Canada, when you go shopping now, there's no longer any plastic bags because we are a quote unquote environmentally friendly country,
course.
right? So you have to buy these bags for 50 cents or $1 that are reusable bags.
Yes.
Right? So my local supermarket, Metro, Loblaws, whatever, I buy these bags right? You're with me so far.
Yes.
So I have about 4 of these
Okay.
that I put in the back seat of the car. So when I'm going shopping, I take the bags in.
Do you actually? Because I always forget to take
No,
them in, and then
I am
just
responsible,
Have, like,
and
Same,
also
Pegah.
as Loha's a sarfajui.
oh.
Yeah, I want to.
Good job.
Thank you. I want to. Who wants to pay the 50 cents every time?
I know, but it's like I
Wow.
forget it.
This
and then,
is. I'm sorry. This is privilege.
Oh, here we go. I knew.
This is
I knew he
privilege.
was gonna say privilege.
I mean, this is a rich kid mentality.
I
Or
promise
maybe
you.
it's
I'll just buy another
forgetfulness.
bag.
No,
Maybe it's forgetfulness.
exactly,
No.
and I promise you, I'm not the only one.
No, it's not forgetfulness.
not. I'm with you.
Triple R is on my side.
So when you
here.
buy the new bags, what do you do with the other bags?
I put them all in the back of the car,
Yeah,
and then
so you've
now
got
I
a
just
million
have
bags.
like a million bags in the back of the car.
Actually, you know what the move is? I mean, this is really not. Maybe this is about the Iranian diaspora. I don't know. The move is because I saw somebody at the checkout counter. The woman actually suggested this once when I had forgotten my bags.
Right.
Just load the cart up, take it to your car, and then
Okay.
put it in your bags.
Good idea.
You don't actually have to have them in
Bring-
the bags. Anyway. So I don't want to have to buy new bags. I mean,
Right.
these are 50 cents each. Come
Yes.
on. It's a recession.
Okay, I know
Right?
where this is going. The Sarfajui is now coming up.
The savagery is enough that, I mean, nobody's ever going to go out with me. But so, like,
I thought I'm
Telling
this
these-
one here.
I was brought up to not waste, So what do I do with these? And like Super P,
Oh, boy.
my trusty right-hand person, she was like, just throw them out. Throw these bags out. They've been contaminated by the it's like nuclear waste by the
Exactly.
ghormeh sabzi. Throw it out, right? Just throw the bags
can't
out.
salvage those.
These bags collectively cost $2. If you the 4 bags,
Oh,
they
my.
might even be 5, so $2.50.
Remind me to bring you some of my leftovers.
So what do? I wash the bags.
Oh no.
I washed the bags in Tide Sport, like, really strong detergent that I use for my gym clothes, like
Nope.
I'm going to wash the bags, right? And thinking I've got this beat now, this ghormeh sabzi thing. Today, as I was I went and did some grocery shopping. I
Right.
pulled out the bags and I mean the entire supermarket checkout counter turned around
I'm
because
sure
of the
they
smell of
did.
ghormeh sabzi.
I'm sure.
It doesn't. You could in a rinse cycle, a 45-minute rinse cycle with strong Tide. I could not get rid of that. I have to throw these bags out
Of course you do.
and probably sell the car. If not total the car, because nobody's
only-
going to buy the car because it smells like ghormeh sabzi.
I mean, I only said this a week and a half ago now.
I thought
and
it was
you're
a joke.
Just coming
I
to
didn't
this
know I actually had to
conclusion.
sell the car.
Listen, ghormeh sabzi goes inside the atoms.
Yes, the molecules.
Literally.
Yeah, fills the gaps of the atoms.
It
and
really
molecules.
is like, you ever see the movie Silkwood, like where they're near a
No.
nuclear reactor and they have to like wash themselves with special, it's like you get this ghormeh sabzi and you can't escape it.
No, there's
It's
no
been
way.
weeks now. It's been,
Maybe it's time to throw out those bags, Jian.
I know, it's for sure. I mean,
Please.
listen, I spent at least the $2.50 on detergent trying to clean these things.
Between Triple R and I'm sure we can give you some bags of ours that are stuck in the back of
Definitely.
the
Well, the
car.
Triple R was like, let's start a business.
I know.
I don't know what this business. What are you going to clean these? I mean, you need to find
Ghormeh sabzi
the product
cleaners.
to get rid of ghormeh sabzi. That's the problem.
But I'm sure some people know.
Mm.
Maybe you should pour some other kind of food on top of it. And
I think
wash that.
I think
other
you were
food.
right. I think something like bleach. Like it has to be something that's strong. It's like a superpower. It has to be something that's stronger than ghormeh sabzi to get
Okay.
rid of the.
Chinese food.
No,
Then we're mixing all sorts of smells.
Yeah.
But you know what I just thought
I
of?
still can't invite any non-Iranians into the car. At least the Iranians will get in and roll their eyes, go, "Oh my God, who did you have
Who
ghormeh
spilled some
sabzi
ghormeh
recently?"
sabzi?
Yeah. But I mean, non-Iranians are just
No
not going
way.
to understand. And this is a blight on our culture. We don't want people to have bad impressions of us.
Of course.
Yeah.
By the way, somebody wrote to me after I was talking about this. A few people did. None of them were helpful. They were all
Okay.
more or less laughing at me. But one of them said kubide is just as bad.
It
The
is.
smell of
That's true.
I
kubide.
agree.
Oh
I agree.
my
Oh,
God.
I don't
yeah.
think so. It doesn't last as long, does it?
It doesn't last, but it's, yeah.
It has its own odor.
Yeah.
It's a horrific.
It's
Why are we
odor.
eating these
detrimental.
things? What is wrong with
Because
us?
they taste
taste
and
so
smell
good.
good
Yeah.
fresh. It's when you leave them in the car and it spills and things like that. But try Coke actually.
That's right.
Spill the Coke.
No. Try
Oh.
washing those bags with Coke
oh.
if you really
Or
want.
Sprite. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
These bags, these 50-cent bags.
I mean, if we're really trying to,
I know my mother's gonna be like, "Oh, you sound so cheap." It sounds like we don't have anything. My mother's gonna be like, "Yeah, I can't win." Anyway, that's the update. It's a disaster. Don't offer. I'm not going to give you a ride anywhere because you'll just regret it. You'll go home smelling like ghormeh sabzi. Although so tasty.
I mean,
it is, Pegah.
No. This is you're on the wrong side of history on this one.
Maybe.
Not liking ghormeh sabzi. That's a sin. Speaking of my family, I have a cousin that just got back like 3 days ago from Iran.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so I was asking, well, what's going on? What's I mean, he was in Tehran, so I don't have the reports from Balochistan or something. He's in Tehran. Economy really bad. Everything really expensive compared to what it was. So we know that. He said people are out though. He said the cafes were all really busy, even late into the night. A lot of women not wearing hijabs, like not wearing rusaris. And from his standpoint, not a lot of revolution talk. Not a lot of people agitating in the streets. Nor from his position of where he was hanging out in Tehran, where there were a lot of people talking about Israel and Gaza and stuff. Which is interesting to me.
That is interesting.
That is something that clearly is top of mind in North America, but maybe as a product of the lack of migration to Iran at this point for either Jews or Palestinians. There's not a bunch. There's no diaspora now, as much anyway, in Tehran of people who have a direct stake in what's going on there. I don't know if that's right. So the one thing though, when he was saying that there were lots of women not wearing rusaris, and we keep hearing about these hijab laws,
the police
becoming more oppressive again. And of course, I mean, we definitely know. Look at Armita, the sad story of another young woman dying based on a confrontation with the morality police. This is something that comes up with Iran, because the other thing he said, I was walking my brother's dog. My other cousin has a dog, and I was like, wait. You can walk the dog? Isn't it Iran? You're not allowed to. And he's like, come on. Of course, you can walk the dog. Sometimes they'll tell you don't. You shouldn't go. And this is the problem with assessing Iran from afar, because everything you say. I mean, Iranians have lived with this, and they kind of go, yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, that's the way, and it's it becomes so normalized that it's not outrageous, right? It's like the notion of anyone having an issue with anyone walking a dog is crazy to me. Yeah. But to my cousin, it's like, well, of course, yeah. But we still walk the dog. I mean, it's this bizarre paradox of whether we should consider these things a big deal, which they are, or we shouldn't consider them a big deal, because you can't spend your life, for those living inside Iran, with your hair on fire, right? It's like, okay, well, this is our reality, and we're going to go out. And like he was saying, an interesting nuance that I hadn't thought of. He was saying some of his friends and our family, they would not wear the rusari when they were out, but if they got in the car, they would put the rusari back on. You know why?
Yeah.
The cameras and things.
That's right, because the license plate. Yeah. Like if you're just hanging out in a cafe, they don't know who you are, but if you're in a car, they can track you with a. I thought that was
they give you big fines actually, if you're in the car. That's why when they get into the car, they have to wear a hijab.
At the very least, they give you some hefty fines.
Yeah, like if it's the third strike or something, then you're in trouble, right?
In big trouble.
But as you were saying this, it's funny because I'm sitting here and I'm not surprised by any of that.
No, it's not surprising.
You're saying the dog thing and the hijab and not wearing scarves and people being in cafes and things like that. I mean, none of that is shocking to me. And yet at the same time, like you said, it should be, because at the core of it, why should there be a law that prohibits you from walking your dog in?
No, and even for the average Iranian who on the one from who are in Iran, like my family, or who you meet who've just come from Iran, or in the same minute they'll say something like, come on, it's not so bad in Iran. We're living our life.
Yeah.
We're doing our thing. This is all propaganda that, and then 30 seconds later, our situation in Iran is terrible. Like whatever. So I mean, it's a living paradox, right?
Yes.
It's a what do you do with that? And certainly after 45 years, you can't just be. I mean, you can't be angry and depressed 24/7. You have to live a life. You have to go to the gym or, walk your dog or whatever,
Right.
despite the rules and regulations. You were going to say something. Resonant.
No, I was going to say that.
Triple R.
Triple R. As someone who's lived in Iran for the good 16 years, 15 and a half years of my life, the system brings you, the system that you live in gets you used to this duality. You live in a constant duality and you get used to it.
Right.
Okay, so I would wake up and my family was not religious. I used to have really great relationships with my cousins who were boys, and we would play and we would sit down. No one had a hijab or anything, but as soon as I were to get out of the house, I was to wear this hijab, and this was from the age of 6 when I started to go to school. So the thing that created in my mind was, okay, there are rules, but I can break the rules when no one's watching. And that's exactly.
There's also the egalitarianism of inside the house versus the discrimination outside the house.
And you see that culture ingrained especially in the newer generation who didn't live at all before the revolution of, okay, we're used to saying something but doing something else. We're used to doing something but inside we feel something else. You even hear Persians say this about Iranians say this about one another of, yaru dorue.
Well,
we are
two-faced,
and the duality lives in all of us because we're used to that.
We're trained to lie from such a young age. I think for anyone who's ever lived in Iran, especially post-revolution, I spent 5 years of my life there, very minimal in comparison to so many others, and yet what you're saying is something that I vividly remember, that there were things that you did or said or heard or watched or whatever else inside the house, but the minute that you went outside you didn't. So from such a young age, it's like you're taught that the private sphere is so different than the public, and this mistrust and almost this guard that you build from such a young age is because of those circumstances.
Exactly. And there are so many ways around it. Like here in Canada, if you get caught, there is almost zero chance that you can get out of it without paying for what you've done, right? But in Iran, if you say I have a cousin in this ministry or I have a cousin in there, you can easily get out of it, and most people, I think, do.
But the normalization or the which is necessary to live one's life is also the problem, right? It's where the revolution, the uprising, has an issue, falls into a pothole, because it's hard to get people as angry and as frustrated as Iranians inside Iran can get and should get. It's hard to push you off the ledge in terms of anything happening that is going to be shocking enough to elicit an answer that isn't, well, this is the way it is. What are we, this is what we've been living with. So, and do we really want to take the next step and put our lives more in danger by sending our kids into the streets to fight against the Basij or the military or whatever?
Exactly.
This is what, we've figured out how to work this, work within this horrible system.
Yep.
And it's both it's admirable that Iranians have figured out a way to kind of subsist or survive in this, but also it is endemic. It's the problem because how do you have an uprising? How do you have a successful revolution
when you've
if
adapted?
Ultimately everybody's kind of going, this is the way it is, and not only adapted, but there's ways in which we can skirt it from time to time. This is where I go with my girlfriend to not get caught, and this is how we don't wear we have a great cafe, and we all drink in the basements, and so it just becomes we can't put our lives on the line at this stage. I'm not speaking as someone who I'm not trying to speak for people inside Iran.
Right.
Obviously, I can't do that. But just as an observation from my family, from people who were there, this is the constant battle, right? This is the question mark, and it's always interesting to me because having not lived there, it's always a surprise to me. It's like what, it's like from Babak Amini's second album being banned, and it's like, dude, it's an album of soft acoustic guitar music, instrumental guitar. Like, how would that get banned? And he's kind of like, yeah, that's the way it is, right? I mean, to the daily life issues that are faced today, it's something that can only come with the acceptance of living in a system with year after year after year after year, and just going, well, what can we do about it?
You should see the reaction of people who come to visit Iran who are not Iranians, right? So my family is originally from Esfahan, and Esfahan is a huge touristic city, and still to this day, even with the regime and everything, we Esfahan gets people.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
You've never been, have you?
No. But I know it's beautiful.
So I've met a lot of people in Esfahan who have come to just visit the city, and from other countries, and what they always say is, we are surprised. What we heard in the news is so different from what we are seeing from people, because life is actually very different. People live here, and you're like, well, yes, but you have to go into their homes, and then you'll see something very different from what you're even seeing right now, you know. So yeah.
And frankly, as much as I love Cambodia, it's like, it's me going and staying in a hotel in Cambodia and going, this country's great. Why is anybody complaining? And somebody who's, living on the street kind of going, well, it's not entirely the way it is. And by the way, there was a genocide here just not that long ago. And, so the outsider doesn't always see the country for exactly what it is too, right?
Yeah. So maybe to you, the duality, or to people outside of Iran who are not Iranians, the duality doesn't really live because they're not inside the families or inside their homes, but it's something that's ingrained in us. And
we haven't even started the roundtable yet.
I know.
But I just wanted to mention that the other thing I wanted to mention that isn't an official roundtable topic, but I don't know if you guys caught it this weekend. I thought it was interesting that in Canada and the United States, for those of you who are listening from outside of North America, there were two pretty big media stories in non-Iranian media about the situation for Iranians, particularly about the IRGC and the dangers of agents of the Islamic Republic and spies and threats to those who've been active. Masih Alinejad, Hamid Ismailioun. There was one on Global News, a kind of a long form video piece that ran, I think, yesterday, and then 60 Minutes, the big American show, it was kind of a piece about Masih, but and I thought that was I don't think, did you see them? Did you watch?
Yeah.
You did, yeah. And did you? I mean, there wasn't anything there that was going to be particularly new for Iranians who have been following this, or anybody who's been listening to our show is not going to be like, oh my God, I saw this thing, and there's a guy named Hamid Ismailioun who's getting threatened, But I do think it was positive that overall, I don't agree with everything, in terms of some of the TV decisions, but it was positive that these things aired, and that this information is getting out there, and that it was also a little bit interesting to see in both pieces, this sort of underlying thesis was like, oh my God, even in Canada, this can happen, whereas we've been talking about for a long time, the issue of everything from Aghazadehs to IRGC spies here in Canada, and not putting the IRGC still on the terrorist list, and the issues we have with that. But nonetheless, what did you think?
I think it was great that they shed a light on the fact that Iranians have been crying about, listen, these people are coming into this country, and you have to, in America, in Canada, and in Australia, and you have to, because 60 Minutes in Australia also did a article on this, like a little video piece on this, and I think it's a big thing that all these governments have to be aware of is you need to kind of look into who are the agents of IRGC and get them out of this country. And I think before these pieces, no one really took it seriously. But maybe now that there are these pieces out, more people.
Well, there
are going
has
to
been.
get-
I mean, there was a big, I think it was a Globe Mail or something, did a
Yeah.
big article about it. There has been some takeouts on this, and there have been some, but you're right. I mean, it's
Yeah.
every little bit helps, and kudos to, I mean, global news. I'm actually
surprised.
Yeah, I was impressed with Global TV.
Yeah.
Good for them. They're I haven't seen a lot of that stuff from them. I'm guessing there's an Iranian producer or somebody in there, an
Hopefully.
Iranian Canadian who's
Yes.
helped who's passionate about this. Yeah, good for them. I thought that you have anything to add?
I saw bits and pieces of it. I didn't watch the entire segment, but what I was going to say, and I think this is something we've talked about so many times, is, oftentimes we find quote unquote Western media kind of late to the party, if you will. Like, we've been, as Iranians, we've been screaming at the top of our lungs saying this for the last year and a half.
It's not that
at the very-
sophisticated, too. It's not
that's
like,
the thing. It's like it's not.
By the way, this evil regime has spies here. I mean, it's something that we've been
News.
said a million times.
Exactly.
Yeah, but somehow when it's packaged as a news show item, it's
on
like
60 Minutes it hits
oh
different.
my God, yeah. All right, let's get to the roundtable and our four items today. The first one, I've titled it "The End of Chaharshanbe Suri and Shabe Yalda." These are celebratory events that happen in December of each year for Iranians, and anybody who is of Iranian or Persian culture knows about these. There's something called the Supreme Council of the Cultural Revolution. I mean, you got to love how these titles are always out of an Avengers movie, like the bad guys. The Supreme Council of the Cultural Revolution, which is not the IRGC, right? It's something.
It's not.
It's another wing of the regime. Has now officially said, if I have this correctly, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, has officially, after years of kind of following Khomeini's edict post-Islamic Revolution of trying to basically extinguish Persianness from Iran, the cultural identity that has anything to do with life other than under Islam. This has been an ideological mandate of this regime from day one. But now officially, when it comes to these two official celebrations, they've passed a resolution to officially change the names of Chaharshanbe Suri and Shabe Yalda, so they reflect less on the celebration and more on something that fits with their Islamic mandate. So I love this. The Chaharshanbe Suri is now called, I'm doing the English translation, but the Cultural Day of Hospitality and Bonding with Kin Day doesn't really translate.
Not
but I
at
don't
all.
even think in the Persian it's very strong. But this is another step in the process of trying to have this kind of cultural dominion, Islamic dominion of Iran that will suppress, oppress, and get rid of any signs of Persian culture, including Nowruz, which they're not fans of. It doesn't really work in real life. There's still going to be jump over the fire ceremonies,
Exactly.
but it's not insignificant. Your take?
I mean, I think it's very significant. But before I get to that, I wanted to point out something really interesting. This Supreme Council of Cultural Revolution actually came about in December of 1984. So it was created in the early stages of the revolution specifically for that reason. It was the entire intent behind this council was to actually, amplify the message that Khomeini was trying to spread. So since then, this has been in place, and the decisions made by this council actually can only be overruled by the supreme leader. So there is no way around this or anything like that. And I think it's very significant because I look at it in two ways. One is exactly what you were saying, which is suppressing and erasing anything that's left of this quote unquote Persian culture and wanting to dominate every aspect of Iranians' lives and not even allowing them to share in some of these cultural events. But also I think when you look at it from a legal perspective, because this is now officially being done, they can actually legally take action against anyone who is celebrating. So if you look at an event like Chaharshanbe Suri, for example, we've seen that, individuals go out onto the streets, there's large gatherings, there's, happiness and music and dancing
God
and all
forbid.
these. Exactly.
God forbid. Yeah.
That's right. And so now that this is actually, passed as a mandate, it's judicially, it's gone one step further. It's that extra effort in instilling fear in individuals, even on days such as these.
Right. Raha?
Yeah, I was actually going to say the exact same thing, that the cultural, this شورای عالی انقلاب فرهنگی, which is the
Supreme Council of the Cultural Revolution.
Exactly. Yeah. It came about in after the revolution, obviously, and we had something called the Cultural Revolution in Iran, which happened in 1980 until 1983, which is why it was established in 1984, and it started with closing down all universities.
Sure.
So in effect, what they're basically trying to do is take away all the culture and tradition that Iranians have had for many, many years.
Because it's a threat.
Exactly.
It's a threat to the existence of the Islamic
Republic. And they're
Republic.
trying to create this divide. Traditions and cultures bring us together as a community. And there are people who are religious, there are people who are not. And the bigger the gap between these two, the better it is for the regime, right? So that's another thing that they're trying to do, is create a divide, I think, between people by hitting the core of the culture.
But I suspect, much like my cousin with walking the dog, this is not something. In fact, I mean, I tried it. I asked a couple of even some of our team members, isn't this a big deal? And they kind of, people are still going to do Chaharshanbe Suri and Shabe Yalda. They're not even going to change the name in terms of the lexicon, the dialogue that Iranians have with each other. Oh yeah, it's the regime doing their thing. So what is a big deal becomes less of a big deal because we're meant to get used to it and kind of roll our eyes and go whatever.
But I was actually thinking the same thing as we were having this discussion. Is it's not going to affect anyone. Realistically, on a day-to-day, no one is going to be fazed by this. They're going to continue the celebration. They're still going to call it Yalda. They're still going to call it Chaharshanbe Suri. But in some way, I actually think that is more detrimental. Because, if they're doing their own thing, Iranians are doing their own thing, there's never going to be, a resolution, if you will. There's never going to be an attempt to fix this problem. And
but don't you think over time it does have an effect?
How?
I don't know. Do 10-year-olds in Tehran today refer to that beautiful tower as Maidan Shahiyad?
I mean, I would be the wrong person to
or
ask. Or
Maidan Azadi, right?
Yeah.
I mean, once you rename things, once you change things, after a while, after a few generations, it becomes what it is.
No, but
right?
that's exactly what I was saying. I was saying that it's not a good thing because we're not fighting for, that was my point, is that, yes, on a day-to-day, it's less of a headache and people still do their own thing. But ultimately, over time, exactly as you're saying, it's almost like, and I don't know, this might be, controversial because I'm sitting on this side of the world. I'm not there. I'm not dealing with the day-to-day. But I almost think that, it takes away from the fight. Against the Islamic Republic, which is what we've been talking about, at least, here for years and years.
Again, how can the fight can't be 24/7?
It can't be 24/7. I know, really, I understand
really
that,
hard. It does, this conversation and this Supreme Council of the Cultural Revolution intersects with item number 2 that we were going to talk about, which is the Minister of Education in Iran saying that textbooks in school should be different for boys and girls. 2 different textbooks. Now, this is something, again, that isn't entirely new in terms of the idea being out there in the ether from this regime. But this is another step towards potential actualization. Raha, I was asking you before we start recording, as somebody who grew up in Iran, I did not, you did, whether you had a different textbook as a girl than a boy would, and you were saying no. There was just a couple of courses in the course of your whole schooling. You want to speak to that if you can?
So during the entire school the entire school kind of years that I was in Iran, there were only 2 grades for which we had one book that was different for guys and for girls. And also I have to add, the books that we studied were taken from before the revolution. And I was one of the last years to kind of grow in that system. Because after, I think 3 years after me, all the books changed from grade 1 and then grade 2 and then so it's funny that.
But which wasn't that long ago, right? You're talking about what, 10, 15 years ago?
I'm 29, so that would be 15.
When you were in high school,
I was in high school around, how many years ago was that? 50. I've been here 14 years. So 14 years ago, I was in Iran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is all the books didn't change in the 1980s after the immediately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And in the 7th grade, Dovam Rahnamai for us, 7th grade, we had a book. We had a course, Harfo Fan, which is professions and techniques in English, and in that course, girls would learn, and I have to add, girls and guys went to different schools, so we were not in the same school. Girls would learn more like sewing, cooking, knitting, things like that, and boys would focus more on welding, carpentry.
Stereotypical.
Exactly. So that was one, and the other one was Dovam Dabiristan, so 10th grade for you. And this one was self-defense. And in our self-defense, we would learn on how to like treat patients and how to like give them shots or things like that. And boys would learn how to hold guns and how to.
So what is your reaction to this new edict or this new idea that kids in school will have different textbooks, boys and girls? It sounds quite Taliban-esque.
I am
well,
pissed.
Except for the Taliban wouldn't allow the girls at all in the school, right?
Yeah. Well, we're going towards that. Sorry,
that's what I was going to say. This is us taking a step towards that system, which is what really pisses me off, because it's not just like making the books different. It's also stating that we're going to make everything more Islamic. And what does that really mean? What does that entail? That girls are only going to learn to count and guys are going to learn to do radicals and, the underlying message here is that women are not equal to men and they will not be treated equally. And I think that's all we need to know about this.
Pegah?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree that it's an Islamization of, education per se, but I definitely recognize that.
Oh, what is it if it's not that?
I think it has more to do with the agenda of the Islamic Republic than it does with religion. I think religion is the tool that they use to say that this is what they're doing, but it has more to do with the fact that we just had a woman-led uprising for the last year and a half. They're recognizing that that women are not going to sit by the sidelines. They're not going to stay silent, and this is an attempt at silencing them. This is a step in the direction of silencing them, and what better way to do it than to limit their education and limit their access and limit their abilities and things like that. So I think it has more to do with the Islamic Republic's agenda. But I also think that we've seen this in other places with the Islamic Republic as well. It's not just through education that we've seen this gender segregation. We see it with the dress, with women having to cover their hair, and the hijab. We see it with
but something. Forgive me for cutting you off. But something that makes me very sad about this is that in all of the negative events and actions of the last 45 years under this Islamic Republic, in all of the atrocities and all of the discrimination around, say, women in the workforce, women on the streets being able to, having to cover themselves, all of that in terms of freedom of expression, freedom of existence. The one thing that, or one of the things that Iranians would point out is a strong education system where Iranian women do really well and graduate in larger numbers from university and are brilliant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing we've been able to hold on to and go, well, that's great. We're not sure what they can do after they graduate from university, especially currently in the economy and those statistics about the unemployment rate for women in Iran, et cetera. But the education exists, and there's a lot of passion for that education, and women are getting the education, and a lot of them are bucking the tide and all that. This undermines that wonderful hope that comes from that education system existing, right?
I don't know if I agree with that, because this isn't new. Again, this is just like the walking your dog, and
So you don't think this will make a difference?
I personally, this is not the first time we've seen Iran's education minister or the Iranian Ministry of Education say things like this. This is
so you won't even happen?
No, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I mean, I can't, no magic 8-ball here, but it might. But what I'm saying is that this, like many other things, is not news for anyone living inside Iran. I think a couple years back they had changed the textbooks for like really, really young kids. Like I think it was like grade 1 or something like that, because there was a section where it says like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like it says Baba nan dad, Maman ab dad, which is like mom gives water, dad gives bread. And I think they had a problem with the fact that the mother was providing. And there was all this conversation about, changing that. And every couple of years there's some ridiculous, statement made by someone in the ministry, and yet despite that we have the most amount of successful graduates who are female.
But I mean, just to point out the obvious, think about how insane this is.
Oh, it's crazy.
The dialogue in Canada, for example, is a heated debate about gender pronouns, actually, which are not an issue in Farsi, but about something like that, right? About microaggressions in university, and we're talking about separate textbooks for boys and girls. It's
huge.
It's pretty scary stuff.
It's horrible, and it's very scary. And don't get me wrong, I am not justifying or excusing or in any way, shape, or form saying.
Are
that
you an
this
agent?
that this is. Do you
correct. Have you in the past had any association with the Supreme Council of the Cultural Revolution?
Yes, bad mouthing them on the round table, absolutely. But going back to what I was saying before you accused me here, what I was saying, that I think this, in fact, is one of the reasons why we have so many strong and educated women in Iran. I mean, anyone I talk to, friends, family, whatever, a lot of Iranian women will go into professions that are male dominated. How many Iranian engineers do you know that are female?
Yeah.
I know so many.
Absolutely.
And so many of them have said, I specifically chose this because I wanted to prove a point and be there and show that I am not only equal, but I can actually do even better than the men and all these things. And I think, again, no surprise, and the women will continue to defy and do what they will.
You want to make any point, or the points have been made?
I feel like what my feelings are different from Pegah. I feel like this is very big, because although there are many educated families in Iran who will defy the system and teach their kids differently, there are also many who are not. There are minorities in small cities whose only way to education are these schools. And if these textbooks become any different, and they become kind of how do you say it, like I don't know how to put it, like if they become different for women, for girls and boys, in a way, in an Islamic way, and in a way that doesn't teach anything to girls, we're going to have a huge issue, because our next generation is going to be consisted of girls who have not learned
we all know textbooks are a big deal.
Of course.
I mean, we debate here again, why hasn't there been more inclusion of the First Nations, in Canadian history textbooks? It boggles the mind that you could even suggest this anywhere in the world in 2023. But there we have it, the Islamic Republic, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go to item number 3. Iranians in protester crossfire. I wanted to bring this one to you guys and hear from you, because there was a video that I saw on the weekend. I think it was a demonstration that was happening in London, England. And it was a pro-Palestinian demonstration, which looked mostly very peaceful and certainly very successful. And, there was a lot of people out in the streets. But there was a video of a guy who was an Iranian guy, and it was shot by Iranians, because you could hear them talking about him, who was holding up a sign that says Hamas
ISIS.
equals ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these, well, I don't even know. I mean, pro-Palestinian or pro-Hamas, I don't know who they were. Some of these protesters see the guy, and I'm assuming a lot of people might have seen this video, but if you haven't, they end up sort of first trying to take away the sign, and then basically physically assaulting this guy and chasing him away.
Right.
These things happen on demonstrations. There are all kinds of fringe groups on demonstrations. There's all kinds of things that occur that cannot be only viewed in a microcosm. So I'm always careful that, if there's one video of some lunatic at a demonstration, to not cast all of the people at the demonstration by one brush and go, well, they're looking, But I thought this was interesting. Again, something that we've talked about a few times in this program over the last few weeks since October 7th and since the latest horrific sort of war that's happening between Israel and Hamas or the Palestinians, and first the loss of life in Israel that was horrendous, and now the massive loss of life in Gaza that's terrifying and horrendous to watch. We've been talking about the weird place that Iranians find themselves in this, because even if you are sympathetic, and many people would make many cases for their reasons to be with the Palestinian cause, even in this scenario, you are also keenly aware that Hamas is supported by this murderous Islamic regime that we've just spent the last year attacking. So we know that because it's killing its own people. So we know that when the Iranian guy holds up a sign saying Hamas equals ISIS, there's a lot of background and history to holding up that sign, presumably for this guy, that goes beyond what happened on October 7th and whether the reaction is too much or not. And, and so it was a reminder. Like, I just felt, oh, you guys who are attacking this guy, I don't know the guy. Maybe he's, who knows? But I presume he's got reasons that run deep. Maybe he's the sibling of a family member who's been killed by the Islamic Republic, and he is feeling this anger towards Hamas and wants to clarify this for the Palestinian protesters, the pro-Palestinian protesters, and the fact that gets lost in this, this guy, knee-jerk reaction, this guy must be
pro-Israel,
anti-Palestinian,
Yes.
When, again, to state the obvious, that we know the leaders of the Islamic Republic of Iran couldn't give a fuck about the Palestinian people, and never have actually done anything to support the Palestinian people, other than issue these plaudits that are part of their ideological agenda of spreading the gospel of Islam, their version of Islam, etc. So it was an interesting video to watch. It wasn't the first time we see we're experiencing these weird moments where I see my friends part of a pro-Palestinian demonstration, and then on the same demonstration I see Islamic Republic flags. I go, that's the flag that we were just demonstrating against.
Exactly.
How do we make sense of this? Pegah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny that you say that. I have a very dear friend who is Palestinian, and we oftentimes, and actually we went to school together. We both studied poli-sci. We grew up, at demonstrations and, having lots and lots of these kind of conversations. And so I posed this question to her. I said, I would love your take on this, because to me, as an Iranian, having seen what took place the last year and a half and the last at least 30 some odd years of my life, and knowing what I know about the Islamic Republic, it's very easy for someone like me to say the Islamic Republic, the IRGC, terrorist organization, horrible, all sorts of things. Why is it not the same for Palestinians to recognize that about Hamas? And, something that she mentioned to me was kind of eye-opening and really simple, but at the same time eye-opening. And she mentioned that, first of all, Hamas is recognized as a terrorist organization in a place like Canada, because Hamas in Canada is very, very different than Hamas in Palestine. What you have in a place like Canada, or sometimes outside of Palestine, if you will, are bad actors. Exactly. That's the first thing. The second thing is that what most people have to remember, and this is what she was mentioning to me, is that right now Hamas is a resistance movement, or that's what a lot of Palestinians feel, because they're the only ones trying to liberate the land. And it's not the same as an ISIS-style terrorist organization and the views of people who, are perhaps under occupation and in that position. So I think that's where the distinction is. And she was saying that when someone is at a demonstration, perhaps holding up a sign, all of that is lost in translation with a sign that says Hamas equals ISIS. And that was part of the conversation. Now, my take on it was that, the nuances that we often talk about with the Islamic Republic, and so many people not recognizing them, it made me wonder, are there perhaps nuances that we don't know of in the same context with Hamas and Palestinians and this ongoing conflict? Yeah.
There isn't for me when it comes to Hamas. There really isn't. And it feels personal for me. Yeah. It's like the people who went and fucking killed people at a music festival are that is very consistent with the Islamic Republic of Iran for me, and it's personal, and I don't fucking the support of the IRGC for the Islamic Republic for Hamas cancels Hamas for me. Now, that is a different position from not having extreme problems with carpet bombing of Gaza and killing innocent people and Palestinians, etc. But that's my point, that we can't this puts Iranians in some Iranians, like this guy who's at the rally with the Hamas equals ISIS thing, in a weird position, because no one's stopping to go, interesting, well, why would you have that position, buddy? They're attacking him, right?
Exactly. But I want to pose a question, and this is something that I genuinely have kind of struggled with it over the last, since October 7th. Do you think that as Iranians we're overplaying the Hamas and Islamic Republic connection? Because the reality is, whether we want to admit this or not, there is something to be said about the dangers of this, because it's a pretext to widening the conflict in the region. It really is. If you look at it,
and some
on a
would say
bigger
we
scale,
are overplaying it. Some would say the big relationship is Islamic Republic and Hezbollah, not Hamas, etc. But I mean, you have the Abdullah, you have the supreme leader cheering Hamas on.
Exactly.
I mean, what do we need to know?
And that's the problem, is that you see images like that.
You're not cheering the Palestinians on, by the way.
Yeah,
cheering on Hamas.
It's never about the people. It's always about those organizations.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh. The first thing I did...
We're doing a roundtable.
I'm listening very intently. I'm like, this is very interesting. So the first thing I did when I watched that video was I searched what percentage of Palestinians are pro-Hamas. Because to me, just like you, Hamas is a terrorist organization. It's not recognized as a terrorist organization as it is... as is not the IRGC recognized as a
no, it
terrorist.
is. It is. Hamas is on the terrorist list. Yes,
in Canada. Yes,
in Canada.
In Canada,
the IRGC is not.
Okay. Yeah. But then I was like, because one of the arguments that everyone's making is people who are left in Palestine are kids and women who have not had a vote when they voted Hamas in. So why should they be killed? But now the attack was made by a few it was kind of like kids, almost like my age, weren't they? Like the people who attacked this guy with the sign. I see. I was wondering which attack we were talking about. the guy who was
there were
sign,
it looked really like there were young people who were
So one of the things that caught my attention was, because of this conflict, even if people weren't siding with Hamas and they wanted Hamas gone, as Pegah said, now they're looking at it as a resistance, and now they're siding with Hamas because it's the only force that's kind of keeping them alive in a way. You know what I mean?
Well, yes. I mean, I think, Pegah, I dare say your friend, if they're listening, should feel like you did them justice. I think you explained that situation very well, of how they may view Hamas. I don't think that necessarily changes the reality of what happened on October 7th. Absolutely and what's not. Happened after October 7th, and how it's horrific on all sides and all that. But I mean, for my interest is how where this sits for Iranians in the diaspora. And I have to say that I have dear friends who are really, really, pro-Israel on this one, who are just kind of like, hey man, this country has been with us on getting rid of this regime, and these are, and I have friends who are on the demonstration, on the pro-Palestinian demonstrations, and who are big time in the Free Palestine movement. But I also know a lot of people, and maybe more than the folks on those demonstrations on the either side, who are who are Iranians, who are kind of befuddled about our position on this, because there's the intersection of how the Islamic Republic is involved here,
Exactly.
and that makes it more difficult to have a black and white view of this. I think we've said enough about that. So we move on.
Yes.
Lines have blurred, and it is what it is, I guess.
Well, I don't know what are you talking about? What is
No,
what it
I'm
is?
saying the lines of everything have blurred in this conflict. Like there's a humanitarian side of looking at it, and that's when I go, like, Palestinians are dying, and I'm sad about it because it's kids involved. It's like you can like it's horrible. It's a human genocide. And on the other side, Hamas really is a terrorist organization, because what they did on October 7th, I mean, it's mind-blowingly.
It's weird how
stupid,
sometimes it's not even like some of the debates and demonstrations and stuff we're seeing. They're not even about Israel and Gaza anymore. It's like it's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just,
why I'm saying the lines have blurred,
and
because
and particularly worrisome when it comes to castigating entire numbers of peoples as bad actors or whatever. Finally, this news that came out today. So there's a TV network called Manoto, a Persian language Iranian TV network. Iranians will know it. It's very popular inside Iran, particularly for its cultural programming. We recently had one of the news anchors, however, on our show, Farshad Motaqi, wonderful guy, who's a very handsome, khoshtip guy, who reads the news there. But we've also had folks like Shirin Nasiri and others who've been part of the cultural programming from Manoto. So Manoto put out a statement today that said what, Pegah?
It was a really interesting and lengthy statement. They, mentioned it started off as, I guess, a thank you to both the viewers and the employees, and it cited some difficulties that they've had with, with financial shortcomings, difficulty, with finances, instability in political situations within regions. It talked about the inability to grow as a result and to continue producing content that they've been producing for 14 years, which I thought, I couldn't believe that Manoto has been around for 14 years. But essentially the message was that due to all of these issues, it's likely that they will be shutting down Manoto. And that the timeline that they provided is that, at the earliest, this would happen as of the end of January of 2024. So simply within 2 months, I would say. But there wasn't anything definitive, I guess, in this very lengthy post. It was very, maybe and if and based on these things, and it might happen. And
although the way the internet works is, by a few minutes later, it had turned into Manoto is going off the air.
Yeah.
Which wasn't what the statement said.
No, not at all.
And I have a take on this.
Okay, what's your take?
My take?
I have a take on this too.
Oh, do you?
I do.
All right. Do you have a take on this, Raha?
Not really.
Okay.
I have a conspiracy theory.
I think your take is, you have a conspiracy. Even better.
Even better, yeah.
Do you want to start with that, or do you want to hear our takes first?
Well, the conspiracy theory is that, many Iranians are saying that Manoto is being partially funded by the Pahlavi family because where are they getting all this footage from back then, and from their private footage of Farah and Shahzadeh, and also like they're promoting monarchy a lot. So that's the conspiracy.
What does that have to do with their statement today?
No, I'm just thinking maybe the Pahlavi family is going broke. Is the conspiracy theory.
Okay, right. I think it is what it is. Would have sufficed. But no, I got you. First of all, you're absolutely right that there have been some question marks about where the funding comes for Manoto. It's always been a little bit of a question mark. It's like, well, it's on the air. It doesn't always have advertising. Where's there's somebody's funding it, whatever. I think Kebon Abossi would say it's not the Pahlavi family, the head of Manoto, but that theory does exist out there. My take on it is that, first of all, it is very hard to run a TV network these days, and it's very hard to run a Persian TV network. And let's remember that Manoto is, for all intents and purposes, in contradistinction to some of the others, independent. It is not BBC Persian, which is taxpayer funded, right? And it is not Iran International and MBC that are funded by a country, a rich country, right? So it kind of falls within those cracks, and I think has to be recognized for its independence. And it's really hard to make a go of this because there isn't the infrastructure for successful Iranian TV, outside of Iran, or successful Iranian media. This is something that we feel as Roqe Media, a very, very, very small version of Manoto, that I completely identified with the statement that was made today. In fact, I thought, what a good idea. That's a good statement I should make about, we're trying to keep alive, we need help, etc. Let's remember that much like how rappers can have 1 million followers or a gazillion followers inside Iran, they can't monetize that because it's hard because they can't go tour in Iran and make money. So similarly, if you're running an Iranian network where most of your audience is inside Iran, there's challenges with monetizing that. So Manoto, and then the uprising came, and where the uprising might benefit a network like Iran International or BBC Persian that are more hard news oriented, Manoto had to sort of scramble and figure out how it's going to deal with the uprising, which I think it did an interesting job of. It used a lot of first-person footage that was being sent to them, and with Farshad talked about how he's one of the people who cultivates that and curates it and puts it on the air, etc. So, but it necessarily affected their programming. So my take on it is, and I kind of hope I'm right because I wouldn't want to see the end of Manoto. I don't think it's the end of Manoto. I think that this is a way of saying, hey, you guys out there, support us. And potential advertisers. I mean, and frankly, it's kind of a genius blow. I mean, to kind of go because now, if you just put out a call for support and advertising, nobody would listen to it. But this is news. What, Manitoba's going off the air? And there's a lot of people who love the network. A lot of people who would love the support of the Pahlavis that the network has shown, for example, who might step up now and go, hey, how can we help?
For sure.
And so I suspect that, and even some of the language, I mean, I was reading, I had it read to me and then I was reading the English translation, so maybe some stuff was lost, but even in some of it they were kind of saying, this is not goodbye, we're trying to make this happen. So if you're really closing shop, you say, we're closing shop, we're bankrupt, thanks everybody. You don't kind of go, in the next few months we might wind down, we hope not. And so I think this is a very smart way of saying, that's what you called it. I'm not necessarily going to say it's smart. I'm not going to go that far, but I'm going to say it's a smart way of saying, hey, we're here. If you like what we're doing, we need support. Yeah.
You're not helping them right now.
I'm not helping them?
No, by saying that, you're
Why?
like, they're going to come back. Now people who are listening to us are going to be like, we're not paying.
That's true. Now, with that said, Roqe Media. I mean, honestly, I don't know if we can make it to December. So if
Go
you're
to our
out
website
there, every single
roqemedia.com.
time we say support us,
Yes.
There's a lot of people who, the new thing is for people to say, I've run into a couple of people who said, oh, I'm one of your subscribers. I support you guys, and I'm really like you're one of the Roqe members. Yeah. Each month. And then they're not. They're just saying
follow
that.
us on Instagram.
Because the textbooks we're back to they're all lying. Iranians are used to lying. I don't know. Yeah, they follow us on Instagram.
They
that
follow
must be
us on
it.
Instagram. That's what it is.
The explanation for subscribing and giving us money each month is the following us on Instagram. But if you do want to support Manoto and Roqe Media, we could use sponsors and advertising. Anyway, that's my take on it.
That's a very interesting take.
You don't agree?
No. I do agree to some extent. My
What is
thought
your take?
immediately when I read this was, I actually thought of what the last year and a half has done to their programming. That was one of the first thoughts that I had, because, Manoto is something that I would regularly watch with my parents, and we would watch a lot of the entertainment content that they produced, like the audition shows and things
Sure.
like that. And the reality is, and we've seen this, on an individual basis as well, at least I have with Iranians around me, that the appetite for that type of programming has changed completely. I mean, not to say that everyone is constantly watching, 24-hour news networks and consuming news 24/7, but I think with the events that have taken place over the last year and a half and the impact that that's had on Iranians as a whole,
Hasn't it come back?
I don't know
Hasn't
if
the desire for, actually, I feel like it's gone full circle, where people are tired of the news stuff now.
I don't know if I would say it's gone full circle yet. I think it's still that kind of weird position where, you'll still hear something from Iran and all of those emotions will come, pouring back, and then you kind of sigh and you say, well, we've been dealing with this for 40 some odd years and life's got to go on, so let me watch something interesting and get my mind off of it and then back to it. So my immediate thought was, what an impact that must have had that has led to some of the challenges that they cited.
Of course. It's a cultural network.
Yes.
It's a social cultural network. When the uprising first happened, nobody had any appetite for any of that. And even if they did, they weren't allowed to say so.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
We had Behzad Boulur on the show last Thursday. Remember, Behzad was basically off the air for 6 months on BBC Persian because he's the cultural guy. And it was like, no, we don't have any time for that. There's shit happening, which is also understandable. And Manoto scrambled and sort of tried to, let's summon our resources and see what we can do to explain what's going on in Iran and to support it. And I think they did a decent job of that, very differently from Iran International, which was more the news kind of the CNN type approach. And then, of course, BBC Persian is BBC Persian. So it's but also the way it rocked the Persian social media world.
Well, that's the second thing I was going to add.
It is interesting, given that when you actually read it, it's not quite as the apocalypse has come as one would think.
Well, I was going to mention, again, I think this is such a cultural thing. Is like when we're about to lose something, or when we have someone who passes, it's like we really. Then start to appreciate, and then we go up in arms about how, oh my gosh, we're about to lose this network or lose this person or whatever, and that appreciation is then brought to light. So that was I thought that was an interesting aspect of it as well.
All right.
So if you like Roqe Media,
if you'd like
to support us,
unless you need me to do the whole same thing and say that hopefully they'll do well. Thank you. That's the end of our roundtable.
Thank you.
This Thursday. I was going to get to. There was more tea fallout. Maybe we'll talk about it. Yeah, there's more comments about tea.
Fallout.
Well, fallout from the show about tea with Behzad Boulur and whether you can drink herbal tea at Iranian Mahmouni's.
I've been monitoring those comments. Some of them are quite interesting.
Like what?
I think there was one where there was someone was like, "No way, this is not." Of course not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. People are
like these strong opinions.
Exercised about this. Yeah. But maybe we can talk more about that on Thursday. We have Golriz Kahraman, who's the New Zealand MP. You're of Iranian descent, obviously. Joining me for our feature interview on Thursday. We'll have the roundup as well. And back here for the roundtable on Monday. Thank you, resident Raharu, the Triple R.
Whoop, whoop.
Thank you, smart Pegah Ganji, SPG.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you out there. This is Full Time for Roqe for today, the roundtable. For all things Roqe related, go to our website, Roqe Media, where you can link to any and all of our platforms: Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple, Castbox, Telegram, Instagram, YouTube. And if you do go to our website, roqemedia.com, you can press that support us button to support us We actually do really appreciate it and need it. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Super Parisa, Smart Pegah, Methodical Kaveh, Bearded Omid, Savvy Roham, Talented Anahita, and Resident Raha. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Do subscribe if you haven't done so already on any of our platforms. That part is free. Find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. Find us on Instagram at Roqe Media. In the meantime, as ever, Mizun Bashi.